I've been waiting all night.
Harrison, it's so good to see you.
My favorite girl.
I stood in a mansion filled with 200 guests, 7 months pregnant, watching my husband kiss his mistress under the chandelier while his family announced their engagement. Everyone applauded. No one looked at me. They had no idea I owned the company that employed them all. By dawn, I destroyed everything. This is the most savage revenge story you'll hear this year. Trust me, you need to watch until the very end because what happens is absolutely insane. If you love drama and justice, smash that subscribe button now and let's get into this wild ride. My name is Andrea, and I need to tell you about the night that changed everything. I'm 32 years old, 7 months pregnant, and up until that Christmas night, everyone thought I was just a simple housewife. My husband Harrison believed he married someone sweet and naive. His mother, Constance, thought I was lucky to be part of their family. His sister, Vanessa, openly called me boring at family dinners. They all saw exactly what they wanted to see. But here's what they didn't know. I'm the owner of Whitmore Industries, a company worth $45 million. I inherited it from my late father 3 years ago, and I made a decision that would later become the key to everything. I kept it a secret, not from everyone, just from Harrison and his family. Only my lawyer knew the truth. I wanted to know if Harrison loved me for who I was, not what I had. I even worked at my own company as a consultant, just to keep an eye on things and stay connected to the business I loved. When I got pregnant, I took maternity leave 2 months ago, playing the role of the devoted wife, preparing for motherhood. I should have known something was wrong 4 months into my pregnancy. Harrison started coming home late, his shirt smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. He stopped touching my belly, stopped asking how I was feeling. The man who once couldn't keep his hands off me suddenly found excuses to sleep in the guest room. He said my pregnancy made me restless, that I kept him awake. I found hotel receipts in his jacket pocket, credit card statements for jewelry I never received, charges at restaurants we never went to together. So I followed him one evening. I watched my husband of 5 years walk into a boutique hotel with a woman I recognized from the company, Claire. She was a senior manager in the sales department, beautiful and ambitious, the type who always laughed too loud at Harrison's jokes during company events. I sat in my car and watched them through the hotel lobby window, the way he touched her lower back, the way she looked up at him like he hung the moon. My hands shook on the steering wheel and my baby kicked inside me as if she could feel my heart breaking. But I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I made a phone call to a private investigator. I spent the next 3 months collecting evidence, photos, emails, text messages, hotel receipts, everything. And then I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Harrison wasn't just cheating. He was stealing from my company, $300,000 over the past year, hidden in fake expense reports and fraudulent vendor payments. He was using company credit cards to buy Claire expensive gifts, to take her on weekend trips, to fund their entire relationship. My investigator even found emails where Harrison discussed his plan with Claire. They were going to wait until after the baby was born, then he would divorce me. He thought he could avoid paying child support during my pregnancy and then take me to court later. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, but I'm a businesswoman. I know that anger without strategy is just noise, so I waited, I planned. And I chose the perfect moment for everything to fall apart. The annual Whitmore Industries Christmas Gala. The gala was the biggest event of the year, 200 guests, including every major client, all the senior employees, and half of the city's high society. Constance, Harrison's mother, had been planning it for months. She loved playing hostess, loved the prestige of it all. The gala was being held at the family mansion, or at least that's what everyone called it, a sprawling estate with marble floors and crystal chandeliers, the kind of place that screamed old money. What Harrison and his family didn't know was that the mansion had been quietly purchased by one of my shell companies a month earlier. Constance had been renting it for 15 years, and she was 3 months behind on payments. But I let them keep planning their party. I wanted them to feel safe. I arrived at the gala in a custom silver maternity gown, my baby bump proud and beautiful. I'd had my hair and makeup done professionally. I looked radiant, even if I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. The mansion had been transformed into a winter wonderland. Ice sculptures lined the entrance, a live orchestra played classical music in the ballroom, and champagne fountains bubbled with expensive French wine I couldn't drink. Women glided past me in designer gowns, men stood in perfectly tailored tuxedos, and everyone was laughing and celebrating. Constance stood at the entrance greeting guests like a queen receiving her subjects. When she saw me, her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, you actually came," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Try not to embarrass us tonight, dear. This is an important evening." She turned away before I could respond. Already air-kissing the next guest, Vanessa stood nearby with her friends, and I heard her whisper loudly enough for me to hear, "She trapped my brother with that pregnancy. It's so obvious." They all laughed, and my face burned with humiliation. Harrison barely acknowledged me. He kissed my cheek like I was a distant relative, then immediately walked away to greet someone more important. I was escorted to a table at the very back of the ballroom, seated with people I didn't know. The table was so far from the main area that I could barely see the stage. I sat down heavily, my back aching, my feet swollen in my designer heels, and I watched everything unfold. Then Claire arrived, and the energy in the room shifted. She wore a stunning red gown that hugged every curve, her hair cascading down her back in perfect waves. Harrison rushed to her like a puppy, taking her arm and leading her through the crowd. Constance actually hugged her, something she'd never done to me with any real warmth. "Darling, you look absolutely radiant," she gushed. Vanessa immediately started taking selfies with Claire, posting them to her social media with hashtags like Family First and Love Wins. I sat at my back table, invisible, watching the man I married fawn over another woman while his family celebrated her presence. The formal dinner was exquisite, 5 courses of gourmet food that I barely tasted. Harrison and Claire sat at the head table with Constance and Vanessa, laughing and drinking wine. I was still at the back, my pregnancy making me nauseous from the rich food and the sight of my husband's betrayal on full display. Between courses, Constance stood and made a speech thanking all the special people who made the evening possible. She mentioned Claire 3 times. She mentioned the caterer. She mentioned the florist. She never once mentioned me, the woman carrying her grandchild. I could hear the whispers starting around the room. Guests were noticing. They saw me sitting alone in the back, saw Harrison with Claire at the front, and the gossip spread like wildfire. Some people looked at me with pity, others with curiosity, a few with barely concealed judgment, as if I'd somehow brought this on myself. Then, after dinner, the music stopped. Harrison stood up, straightening his tuxedo, and walked to the microphone on stage. My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice confident and clear, "I have an announcement that will surprise some of you." The room went silent, every eye turned to him. He smiled, that charming smile that had made me fall in love with him years ago. "Claire and I are in love. We've been together for 8 months now, and I'm not going to hide it anymore." The gasp that went through the room was audible. 200 people inhaled at once, shocked. But Harrison wasn't done. "I'm filing for divorce from Andrea," he continued, gesturing vaguely in my direction without even looking at me. "She knew this marriage was over. We've both known for a while. I'll make sure she and the baby are taken care of financially, but I deserve to be happy. I deserve love." Claire stood and walked to him, taking his hand. Constance rose from her seat and started applauding, actually applauding, and Vanessa joined her immediately. "Finally!" Vanessa shouted over the confused murmurs. "Welcome to the family, Claire." Harrison pulled Claire close and kissed her, right there on stage in front of everyone. Some guests applauded hesitantly, others sat in stunned silence. A few looked at me with genuine sympathy. Constance raised her champagne glass high. "To new beginnings," she declared, "to happiness and true love." About half the room raised their glasses, the other half sat uncomfortably, not sure what to do. Then Vanessa's voice cut through the room, loud and cruel. She pointed at me. Andrea, you should really leave. You're making everyone uncomfortable just sitting there. People turned to look at me. I felt 200 pairs of eyes on me, judging me, pitying me, dismissing me. My face was hot, my hands were shaking, and my baby was kicking hard inside me like she could feel my distress. I stood up slowly, carefully, one hand on my belly. The room went quiet again, everyone watching to see what I would do. Would I cry? Would I scream? Would I make a scene? I did none of those things. I simply walked through the ballroom, my head held high, my silver gown catching the light from the chandeliers. Some guests reached out to touch my arm as I passed, offering whispered condolences. Others avoided my eyes. I walked all the way to the bathroom in the mansion's east wing, and only when the heavy door closed behind me did I allow myself to feel everything. I locked the door and stared at myself in the massive mirror above the marble sink. My makeup was still perfect, but my eyes were filled with unshed tears. My hands gripped the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles turned white. My baby kicked again, harder this time, and I put my hand on my belly. "Watch mommy work, princess," I whispered. "Watch what happens when they underestimate us." I pulled out my phone and made the calls I'd been preparing for months. First, my lawyer, Gregory. "Execute protocol scorched earth," I said calmly. "Everything we discussed." He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Consider it done." Next, my accountant. "Freeze all accounts. Initiate the full audit." Then, the board of directors of Whitmore Industries. "Emergency meeting, 7 a.m. tomorrow morning." It's time. I called my private investigator. "Send everything to Gregory now, all the evidence, all the files, everything." And finally, my head of security. "I need access to the company servers tonight, remote access to everything." I sat down on the velvet chair in the corner of that bathroom and reviewed all the evidence on my phone one more time. Harrison's embezzlement, $300,000 stolen over 12 months. Fake expense reports for business trips that never happened. Company credit cards used to buy Claire jewelry, designer handbags, and weekend getaways to expensive resorts. Emails between Harrison and Claire discussing their plans, including one where Harrison actually wrote, "Don't worry, baby, I'll take Andrea for everything she's got in the divorce. She's clueless." Photos of them in the company office after hours, voice recordings from my investigator of them discussing how to hide their relationship until the timing was right. But that wasn't even my biggest weapon. Here's what Harrison and his family didn't know. The mansion they were partying in? I owned it. Through a shell company, my lawyer had purchased it a month ago. Constance had been renting it for 15 years, always pretending it was the family estate, when really she'd been struggling to make payments. She was 3 months behind, and I had an eviction notice ready to go. Harrison's trust fund that Constance always bragged about, it had dried up 2 years ago. Harrison had been living off credit cards and borrowed money from our joint account, which was really my money, since I was the one who'd funded it all along. I stood up, wiped my eyes carefully so my makeup stayed intact, and took a deep breath. Then I walked back to that party. Every conversation stopped as I entered the ballroom. The orchestra was playing again, people were dancing, but when they saw me, a hush fell over the room. I walked straight to Harrison and Claire, who were standing near the champagne fountain with Constance and Vanessa. Harrison's face went pale when he saw me approaching. "Andrea, please don't make a scene," he said quietly. I smiled, a real smile. "I won't," I said sweetly. I walked past him to the stage and took the microphone. The orchestra stopped playing. 200 faces turned toward me. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said, my voice clear and steady. Harrison stepped forward nervously. "Andrea, don't..." But I kept talking. "I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Harrison. You've taught me so much over the past 5 years about trust, about loyalty, about knowing your worth and never settling for less than you deserve." I turned to look directly at Constance. "And thank you, Constance, for showing me exactly what kind of woman I never want to become. Your lessons in cruelty and superficiality have been truly educational." Her mouth dropped open. I looked at Vanessa. "And Vanessa, Thank you for being so transparent about your values. It's helpful to know exactly where people stand." The room was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on those marble floors. I handed the microphone back to the stunned event coordinator and looked at Harrison one last time. "By the way, you should all check your emails, right now." I walked toward the exit, my silver gown flowing behind me. Behind me, I heard the sounds of phones being pulled out, the pings of emails being opened, and then the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard, Harrison's voice, strangled and desperate, "No, no, 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 no." I didn't look back. I walked out of that mansion, got into my car, and drove to a luxury hotel suite I'd reserved for the night. My lawyer and accountant were already there, laptops open, documents spread across the dining table. We worked through the entire night. I signed papers, made calls, and set everything in motion. By the time the sun came up, the destruction was complete. Harrison woke up to police knocking on his door. He was arrested for embezzlement and fraud, handcuffed, and led out of the mansion in front of the catering staff who were cleaning up from the party. The news spread instantly. By noon, his face was on every local news channel. VP arrested for stealing $300,000 from company. All his accounts were frozen. The divorce papers were served, citing adultery, fraud, and theft. His career was over, his reputation was destroyed, and he was facing 5 to 7 years in prison. Claire's world fell apart just as quickly. She was fired from Whitmore Industries immediately for violating the company's ethics policy regarding relationships and for her involvement in Harrison's fraud scheme, the luxury apartment she lived in. Company housing. Eviction notice served. Her car? Company lease. Repossessed by the end of the day. Every company in the industry got word about what happened, and she was blacklisted. She couldn't find work anywhere. Within 24 hours, she went from senior manager with a 6-figure salary to unemployed and unhireable. Constance received an eviction notice for the mansion at 6 in the morning. 30 days to vacate the property. When she called the property management company demanding answers, they informed her that the new owner had decided to terminate her lease due to non-payment. She screamed into the phone, "Do you know who I am?" The voice on the other end said calmly, "Yes, ma'am. We know exactly who you are. You're a tenant who's 3 months behind on rent." Her country club membership, sponsored by Whitmore Industries as part of a corporate package, revoked. Her social circle found out within days that she was broke, that the mansion was never hers, that her entire lifestyle was a facade. The invitations stopped coming. The phone stopped ringing. Vanessa's lifestyle blog, which she'd built her entire identity around, collapsed overnight. All her sponsorships came from companies in my business network. I made a few calls, and every single sponsorship was pulled. Her Instagram followers discovered that her luxury lifestyle had been funded by Harrison's stolen money. The comments turned vicious. She lost thousands of followers in a single day. She had to take a job in retail just to pay her bills. 1 week after the Christmas party, I called an emergency meeting at Whitmore Industries. Every employee was summoned to the main conference room. Rumors had been flying all week about what was happening. When I walked into that room wearing a power suit tailored to fit my pregnant body, you could have heard a pin drop. I stood at the front of the room, my baby bump visible and proud, and I said the words I'd been waiting years to say. "Good morning. My name is Andrea Whitmore, and I'm the CEO and majority owner of this company. I've been working here for the past 3 years, watching, learning, and building this company into what it is today. Some of you just learned a very expensive lesson about respect, about integrity, and about underestimating people based on appearances." The room erupted. Employees who had worked beside me as a consultant suddenly realized who I really was. The news spread through the city like wildfire. The business sections of every newspaper ran the story, "Secret heiress reveals identity, exposes husband's fraud." My company's stock actually went up. Investors loved the story of a strong leader taking decisive action. Harrison is still in jail, awaiting trial. Claire won't take his calls anymore. She moved back in with her parents in another state, working as a waitress because no company in our industry will touch her. She tried to sell her story to tabloids, but my lawyers shut that down before it could go anywhere. Constance and Vanessa are living in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Constance, who spent her entire adult life pretending to be high society, is working as a hostess at a mid-range restaurant. Vanessa stocks shelves at a grocery store. They tried to apologize, sent emails begging for forgiveness, for another chance. My assistant has standing instructions. Mrs. Whitmore is not available ever. As for me, I'm living in a beautiful penthouse overlooking the city. My daughter's nursery is decorated in white and gold, fit for the princess she is. I promoted my loyal assistant to vice president of operations. I started a foundation for women escaping abusive relationships, funded entirely by my personal fortune. My company is thriving, stock prices at an all-time high, and I've never been happier. I'm surrounded by real friends, people who knew me when I had nothing and stuck by me when I had everything. People who valued me for who I am, not what I could give them. My daughter will be born in 2 months, and she'll grow up knowing that her mother bowed to no one. She'll learn that quiet doesn't mean weak, that patience is a weapon. That power isn't about making noise, it's about making moves. Harrison and his family wanted to humiliate me in front of 200 people at a Christmas party, so I destroyed them in front of the entire city. I took everything they had, everything they pretended to be, and I left them with nothing but the truth of who they really were. And you know what? I sleep perfectly well at night. If this story gave you chills, absolutely destroy that like button and subscribe, because I bring you the most intense revenge stories on this platform. Comment below, Team Andrea, or did she go too far? And remember, never underestimate a quiet woman. She's not weak, she's just planning. See you in the next story.